Francis Ford Coppola once said he has 400 favorite films. It just depends on the day you ask him. But when he did narrow it down to just 10, the list was pure cinematic gold. One of these films was literally torched by the studio. One bankrupted its own director. Another nearly disappeared from film history completely. And yet, Coppola still calls them masterpieces. And when the guy behind The Godfather wants you to watch something, you watch it. If Citizen Kane was Orson Welles' triumph, then The Magnificent Ambersons was the moment the studio system crushed him. He adapted Booth Tarkington's Pulitzer-winning novel into what he believed was his real masterpiece. He once said, if they'd left it alone, it would have been better than Citizen Kane. And the studio destroyed it. Welles' original cut ran 131 minutes. RKO took it, chopped out 40 minutes, shot a brand new happy ending behind his back, and burned the deleted footage. Not stored it, burned it. Welles was in Brazil at the time, working on a US-funded Goodwill documentary, and he wasn't even allowed back to finish his own film. That was the end of Welles having final cut in Hollywood. He spent the rest of his life begging for funding and trying to recover what he lost. The test screening that doomed it? Pomona, California. A teenage audience hated the ending, and RKO panicked. Joseph Cotton, who starred in the film and was one of Welles' closest friends, called it vandalism. He said what happened was wanton destruction. Coppola called Ambersons the holy grail of cinema, said it breaks your heart knowing Welles never got to finish it. Even in its butchered form, it's still considered a masterpiece, but the original version is gone forever. The Adventures of Robin Hood was a massive technical achievement. One of the first major films shot in full 3-strip Technicolor. Expensive as hell, especially during the Great Depression. Warner Brothers dropped $2 million on it, and that was a lot of money back then. But it paid off. The film won 3 Oscars and became one of the studio's crown jewels. Coppola remembers poring over the Encyclopedia Britannica as a kid, reading the section on motion pictures. And right there, half a page just about Robin Hood. He says he drooled over those pictures of Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, and the whole cast. That love stayed with him his whole life. Not just because it was dazzling, not just because it was fun, but because it was filmmaking. Real, ambitious, Technicolor filmmaking. Now, this is the kind of story that hits hard if you've ever tried to make something no one else believed in. Playtime was Jacques Tati's magnum opus. It also bankrupted him. He financed it himself, even mortgaged his house. Producers pulled out, so he covered the rest. The budget ballooned to over $3 million, which was insane for a French comedy in the 1960s. In today's dollars, that's equivalent to roughly $30 million. Jacques Tati built an entire futuristic city set from scratch just to shoot the movie the way he envisioned. It took 3 years to finish. He insisted on releasing it in 70mm, but most theaters couldn't project it properly. So the version audiences saw was often cropped, blurry, or ruined. And it flopped. Big time. The director lost the rights to all his earlier films just trying to pay off the debt. He never recovered, financially or creatively. He died sort of penniless. And to make it worse, the French government later demolished the set. Coppola, though, never forgot it. He said Jacques Tati was one of the only filmmakers, besides himself and his failed Megalopolis, who put everything he had on the line to make a film no one else would. Playtime was a box office disaster, but today it's recognized as one of the greatest films ever made. In 2022, it made the British Film Institute's list of the top 100 greatest films of all time. Coppola once called Midnight Cowboy one of the only modern films he really liked, although it came out back in 1969. This is the only X-rated film to ever win Best Picture, though it was re-rated to R later. And it's easy to forget just how much this movie shook things up when it came out. Jon Voight plays Joe Buck, a wannabe cowboy who heads to New York thinking he can make a living as a male prostitute. Dustin Hoffman plays Ratso Rizzo, the con man who latches onto him, and the two of them form a kind of desperate, offbeat friendship. John Wayne hated it. In that infamous 1971 Playboy interview, he said Americans would be fed up with these perverted films within a couple of years. Now that aged well. Coppola loved it, though, and for good reason. Even admitted he was offered the chance to write the screenplay early on, but passed because he didn't really get the book at the time. When I saw the film, I thought it was so beautiful. And I finally met the director, John Schlesinger. And he was the most wonderful man, and so helpful. Then I went and saw all his other films, and I thought they were all beautiful. This one's a visual and musical explosion. Black Orpheus, a full-on retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, but dropped right into Carnival in Rio de Janeiro. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival, won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, and kicked off the bossa nova craze in the US. Practically overnight, it became a full-blown international sensation. Coppola calls it just beautiful. Said the rhythm never leaves your head. There's tragedy in the story, sure, it is Orpheus after all, but it's told with such energy and color that it doesn't drag. Coppola's love for this one is no surprise at all. It's a filmmaker's film. Yes, another musical. You'd think Coppola would be more of a crime guy, but the man clearly has a soft spot for musicals, especially ones that got overlooked. This one stars Lucille Ball and Maureen O'Hara as two dancers trying to make it in showbiz. One's a serious ballerina, the other's a burlesque queen. It's part backstage drama, part feminist statement, and somehow still managed to be forgotten for decades. Coppola didn't forget it, though, because Dorothy Arzner, who directed this, was his teacher at the University of California, and clearly she left a mark. Coppola tells this story about being ready to quit film school one night, and Arzner just looked him in the eye and said, "I've been around, I know you're going to make it," and he stayed. This movie, long dismissed as fluff, ended up getting preserved by the Library of Congress, and Coppola will tell you, it deserves it. Jean Renoir's French Cancan came out in 1955, and it looked like it had been teleported in from another planet. Full of painted sets, dancing girls, glowing Technicolor lighting, this was the exact opposite of what French cinema was doing at the time. And Renoir didn't care. He made a romantic musical about the birth of the Moulin Rouge, just as New Wave cinema was starting to bubble up with realism and politics. Renoir had been in exile, came back to France and said, "Forget all that. I'm making this." Coppola loved it, absolutely loved it. He even called One from the Heart his French Cancan moment. And if you've seen it, you get the comparison. Big colors, big emotions, unapologetically theatrical. Problem is, where Renoir got away with it, Coppola got wrecked. His One from the Heart cost $26 million and made back barely $600,000. It almost ended his career. Coppola mentioned he saw this one recently and really enjoyed it. It's one of those old Hollywood films that doesn't get talked about much anymore, but it left a serious impression. Directed by Josef von Sternberg and starring Marlene Dietrich, this one's set during the Chinese Civil War. Whole thing takes place on a train packed with tourists who end up getting hijacked by rebel soldiers. Dietrich plays this mysterious woman with a past. She's reconnecting with an old flame while the entire train ride turns into this high-tension standoff. The film got 3 Oscar nominations at the 5th Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, and it actually won for Best Cinematography. And that's one of the big reasons it still holds up. Visually, it's stunning. But a lot of that is because von Sternberg was insane about how the film looked, especially when it came to Dietrich. He'd spend hours adjusting lights just to get the exact right glow on her face. And if it wasn't perfect, he'd shut the whole thing down. Now, this one's not a surprise. Raging Bull is on just about every greatest of all time list for a reason. Coppola said it's the film where Scorsese brings everything together. The story, the acting, the cinematography, the style, it all clicks. What most people don't realize is just how close this movie came to never happening. Scorsese didn't want to do a boxing movie. He thought the genre was played out, he wasn't into sports, and honestly, he just wasn't in a good place. After New York flopped, he overdosed in '78. Robert De Niro visited him in the hospital and begged him to do Raging Bull, told him it might save his life. And it kind of did. Scorsese said later he poured all his self-destructive energy into that film. The studio didn't want it. Too violent, shot in black and white, and about a guy who becomes a total monster. But somehow they pulled it off, and it became one of the greatest films either of them ever made. Now this one's pure gothic horror, and Coppola's pick here is very deliberate. Bride of Frankenstein isn't just a sequel, it's one of those rare sequels that actually builds on the original in smart and really creative ways. Directed by James Whale, it brings back Boris Karloff as the monster and Colin Clive as Dr. Frankenstein. And this time, it's not just the same story repeated. Frankenstein's trying to walk away from his twisted experiments, but then his wife gets kidnapped and he's forced into making another creature. What Coppola really loves about it is the backstory. Mary Shelley originally came up with Frankenstein during a little ghost story contest in the Alps. Her, Percy Shelley, Byron, and a couple others sitting around in bad weather, daring each other to come up with something scary. Bride of Frankenstein taps into that same vibe.